Spring arrived and the world awoke. The land of Israel was no different. Fresh grass pushed through the thawing ground, birds sang in the trees, building their nests. But for the armies of Israel, spring meant only one thing: war. King David, the shepherd-turned-king, stayed in Jerusalem. He entrusted his armies to his trusted general, Joab. Joab was a seasoned warrior, a man who knew the sting of battle and the thrill of victory. This spring, Joab set his sights on Rabbah, the powerful capital city of the Ammonites. The Ammonites had long been a thorn in Israel's side. Now Joab would bring them to heel. David, though absent from the battlefield, was ever present in the minds of his soldiers. He was their king, their leader, the man who had united the 12 tribes of Israel. They fought for him, for their families, and for the God of Israel who had promised them victory. As Joab led the Israelite army towards Rabbah, the fate of two nations hung in the balance. The coming battle would determine the course of history for both the Israelites and the Ammonites. The spring air was filled with the sound of marching feet and the anticipation of war. The siege of Rabbah was long and brutal. Joab's forces surrounded the city, cutting off any supplies from entering or leaving. The Ammonites, trapped within their own walls, grew desperate. Weeks turned into months, and still Rabbah held out. Inside the city, the people of Rabbah suffered. Food and water were scarce. The constant threat of attack hung over them like a dark cloud. But the Ammonite soldiers fought bravely, determined to defend their homes and families. Joab, however, refused to be deterred. He was a master of siege warfare, and he slowly tightened his grip on the city. Day and night, Israelite soldiers attacked the walls using battering rams and siege towers. Finally, after many months, a breach appeared in Rabbah's defenses. Joab saw his opportunity and ordered an all-out assault. The Israelite army poured through the breach, their swords drawn and their battle cries echoing through the streets. The fall of Rabbah was near. The battle for Rabbah was fierce, but the Israelite army was unstoppable. They fought their way through the streets, finally reaching the heart of the city, the royal palace. There they captured the Ammonite king and claimed victory. News of the victory reached King David in Jerusalem. He rejoiced at the news, knowing that the Ammonite threat had been crushed. He ordered Joab to send him the crown of the Ammonite king, a magnificent crown made of gold and precious jewels. When the crown arrived in Jerusalem, David placed it upon his own head. It was a symbol of his victory, a testament to his power and the might of the Israelite army. The crown, however, was not the only treasure taken from Rabbah. The Israelites plundered the city, carrying away vast amounts of gold, silver, and other valuables. David distributed the spoils of war amongst his soldiers, rewarding them for their bravery and loyalty. The victory at Rabbah and the riches it brought solidified David's position as king. He was now the undisputed ruler of Israel, a king who led his people to victory and brought them great prosperity. The fall of Rabbah sent shockwaves through the ancient world. Neighboring kingdoms trembled at the might of Israel's army. But one enemy remained undefeated, the Philistines. These fierce warriors had long been a thorn in Israel's side. They lived along the coast and constantly threatened Israel's western border. The Philistines, enraged by Israel's victory over the Ammonites, decided to strike. They gathered their armies and marched into Israelite territory, determined to crush David and his kingdom once and for all. David, however, was ready for them. He had faced the Philistines many times before, and he knew their tactics well. He gathered his own army, including his most trusted warriors, and set out to confront the Philistine threat. The two armies clashed near a place called Gaza. The battle was fierce, with both sides fighting with incredible ferocity. David, despite being a king, fought on the front lines, his courage inspiring his men. Section 5. A giant among men. As the battle raged, a giant Philistine warrior emerged from the enemy ranks. His name was Ishbi-Benob, and he was a truly fearsome sight. He stood over 9 feet tall and carried a massive spear, its head alone weighing over 13 pounds. Ishbi-Benob challenged the Israelites, his voice booming across the battlefield. He sought to kill their king, to crush their spirits. The Israelite soldiers trembled at the sight of him, their courage faltering. David, however, refused to back down. He knew that the fate of his kingdom and his own life hung in the balance. He charged towards the giant, his own sword drawn. The two warriors clashed, their weapons flashing in the sunlight. The earth shook as the giant brought his massive spear down towards David. The king, however, was quick and agile. He dodged the blow and thrust his sword deep into the giant's side. Ishbi-Benob roared in pain, his massive body swaying. He tried to strike back at David, but the king was too quick for him. David delivered another blow, this one finding its mark in the giant's heart. Ishbi-Benob collapsed to the ground, his lifeblood staining the earth crimson. The Philistines, witnessing the death of their champion, were thrown into disarray. Their attack faltered, and the Israelite army, inspired by their king's bravery, pressed their advantage. They surged forward, driving the Philistines back. David, exhausted but exhilarated, raised his sword in victory. He knew that this victory was not his alone. God had been with him on the battlefield, guiding his hand and granting him strength. He had fought for his king, for his people, and for the God of Israel, and he had emerged victorious. The Philistines, defeated and demoralized, retreated back to their own territory. David had once again proven himself to be a brilliant military leader, a man who could defeat any enemy, no matter how large or fearsome. The Philistines, however, were not finished with David. They returned a year later, seeking revenge for their defeat at Gezer. This time they brought with them 4 more giants, each one as large and terrifying as Ishbi-Benob. These giants, the sons of the giant of Gath, were determined to avenge their kin and crush the Israelite army. David's soldiers, seeing the giants, were filled with fear. They had never faced such monstrous opponents before, but David, as always, remained calm and collected. He rallied his men, reminding them of their past victories and assuring them that God was on their side. The battle that followed was one of the most epic encounters in Israelite history. David's warriors, inspired by their king's courage, fought like lions. They swarmed around the giants, their swords and spears flashing. The giants, for their part, fought with savage fury, their massive weapons crushing everything in their path. One by one, the giants fell. Some were slain by David himself, while others were brought down by the combined might of the Israelite army. The ground ran red with blood as the battle raged, the air thick with the sounds of clashing steel and dying screams. Finally, after hours of brutal fighting, the Philistines were defeated. Their army, shattered and demoralized, fled back to their own territory. David and his men stood victorious on the blood-soaked battlefield, their bodies weary, but their spirits soaring. These victories against the Philistines and the giants in their ranks cemented David's legacy as one of the greatest military commanders in history. He had faced down impossible odds, stared death in the face, and emerged victorious time and time again. He had proven himself to be a master tactician, a courageous warrior, and a divinely appointed leader. More importantly, these victories secured the borders of Israel. David's campaigns had pushed back the Philistines, the Ammonites, and other neighboring kingdoms, ensuring the safety and prosperity of his people. Under his rule, Israel transformed from a loose confederation of tribes into a powerful and unified kingdom. David's victories, however, were not his alone. He was surrounded by a group of loyal and extraordinarily skilled warriors, known as David's mighty men. These men were the elite of the Israelite army, renowned for their strength, courage, and unwavering loyalty to their king. There was Jashobeam, who once single-handedly killed 800 enemies in a single battle. Eleazar, who fought so fiercely in one battle that his hand became fused to his sword. And Shammah, who defended a field of lentils against an entire Philistine battalion. These men, and many others like them, were the backbone of David's army. They were the ones who fought on the front lines, who faced down charging chariots and fearsome giants. They were the ones who secured David's victories and helped establish Israel as a powerful kingdom. The stories of David's battles and the exploits of his mighty men were passed down through generations. They served as a source of inspiration for the people of Israel, a reminder of their history, their strength, and their unwavering faith in God.